about economic liberation and freedom.
Critical conversations to invigorate our communities through Black-led CDFIs.
But most importantly, we want people to create wealth.
When we look at our communities, we still see a big disinvestment.
Going from resourceful to resourced.
CDFIs have that high touch. They understand their customers. They know how to reach out to those customers. They stay in touch with those customers.
We are trying to create job makers and not just job takers.
Yeah, I've even heard it said recently that great leaders don't lead from the top down, they lead from the bottom up because they're actually lifting everybody.
We have to do more than just being a regular lender.
Don't give me this story about if I teach you how to fish.
Yes. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Justin Minott here from the African American Alliance of CDFI CEOs. And I am joined by the wonderful, great, powerful Courtnee Biscardi, Executive Vice President of Urban League of Broward County and Central County CDC, here representing would you just mention a word about the doc, right? Because Doc couldn't be here with us today, but if you just mention a word about the doc.
So most people know what you mean when you say the doc, because Dr. Jermaine Smith-Baugh is an amazing president and CEO of the Urban League and all of our subsidiaries, and she could not be here today, but she always sends her regards to this family, our African American Alliance of CDFI CEOs. She is so pleased to be a part of this network, and she leads from the front, making sure that we have access to capital and credit for our community members. And so she's trusting me to carry the water on this one, and I hope I do her proud.
Oh, I know you will. So excited to have you here. Now, Courtnee, your journey's been an incredible one leading into this space. Give us the making of Courtnee Biscardi, being an Executive Vice President, doing all these beautiful things in the community. Who are you? How'd you get here?
I love that you asked this question. So I've been in Florida, Fort Lauderdale area for 20 years this year, but
you have a pet gator?
What was that? I'm sorry.
You have a pet gator? I heard everybody in Florida's got pets.
Of course I do. Yeah, right in the backyard. Yeah.
Good. It's good.
But I am a New York State native, and I'm originally from the Hudson Valley area. So many people don't know that area. Some people may have heard of Poughkeepsie or Middletown, Kingston. I grew up in a very small town called Clintondale, New York, a rural community, believe it or not. My grandparents were migrant farm workers from the South. And so they migrated to that area of New York to work on apple farms. And so I grew up in a very small town, but I went away to college in Rochester, New York, a larger city. And that's where I developed my love for nonprofit, to be honest with you. I was going to be a news broadcaster, and I made the decision early while I was in college that I never wanted to do work that potentially would have me compromise my values. And so I found and fell in love with nonprofit and community and economic development early on. And so I started work in fair housing in New York State. I worked for a nonprofit law firm, communicating with community members around their rights and their protections under the Fair Housing Law and the Fair Housing Act. And so after some time of doing that, my husband had an opportunity to relocate to Florida. And I was like, I think I could do that work there too. And I found a fair housing agency in Miami. And I worked there for several years and enjoyed the experience there because they were filing lawsuits against developers who were discriminating against individuals, primarily in this area at that time on the basis of race, but also on the basis of disability. And so advocacy was in my bones for a very long time. Even as a student and as a child, my mom would say I was always trying to get something done for somebody. But in that work, I was able to interface with the Urban League of Broward County. We provided fair housing education as a part of their first-time homebuyer education program. And over time, I developed a relationship with the Urban League and grew great respect for the work that was done here. And I was afforded an opportunity to enter a coordinator role, leading a program called IDA, Individual Development Accounts, where we helped low-income families acquire assets, purchase a home, start a business, and to go back to school. And so again, my life's work has been in nonprofit, community, and economic development, starting small here at the Urban League in that role, and then had the privilege of overseeing a little more over time. So I've been at the Urban League for 18 years. Hard to believe, 18 years, but started with that small program and grew it. Was able to oversee emergency housing assistance and as well as our housing programming, first-time homebuyer education, pre-purchase, then oversaw education and workforce and many of our program areas here, and rose to the role of Senior Vice President of Operations. And after that, having done many of the things within our organization and our 6 pillars, education, entrepreneurship, jobs, justice, housing, and health, all aimed
Just be rattling them things off. Look at that.
All aimed at ensuring economic self-reliance, parity, power, and civil rights as a part of the National Urban League movement. I landed on an opportunity to oversee our Central County Community Development Corporation, which is a CDC and a CDFI. And it brings me joy every day, honestly. It's so much fun.
I see it so much. Now, Dr. Jermaine's going to be very proud at how you just rattled them 6 off.
You like that?
Yeah. You weren't even looking at notes. Were you looking at notes?
I was not looking at notes.
That's what I'm talking about, everybody. That's passion right
Thank
here. Now, Courtnee, here's what I'm curious about in your story. I just love seeing the evolution of people's journey and how they end up in some of these economic justice spaces, and sometimes, not planning to do so. So you were talking about being a newscaster first. What drew you to that space that you see has carried into your work here? Because there's always a thread that we get to pull at. So what's that?
Yeah, maybe a loaded question. So I think early on, I always liked to communicate. I was very active and engaged in my community and my school. Mm-hmm. I was supported by many people too. So I had meager beginnings. I grew up poor in hindsight, certainly, but I had a good network of people who were able to support me and help me get to the next level. Communication journalism was something that made sense to me. I was a good speaker, a good writer. It was an easy path, at least it seemed so at the time, to go to college and get entry into college. And I knew I could be successful there. And so being a journalist or a news broadcaster made a lot of sense. My name was going to be Mackenzie Young, which is a combination of my middle and maiden name. I said, this is wonderful. I've got it. But hearing enough stories from our professors at that time made me know that I didn't want to misrepresent or represent something that didn't make sense to me, or some of the other jobs that you had to do to get to that job were jobs that I didn't really want to know. And when I think about those who are exploring work, I have a college student now. As he thinks about what he wants to do, get a good understanding of what it takes to do that job. What you're not going to get the job that you ultimately want when you start. So what are the things that you have to do in order to get access to that job that you ultimately want to have? And so those are some of the things that I learned that I didn't want. And it put me on a journey to explore really, what do I want? What aligns with me? What makes sense to me? And I knew that I had benefited greatly from people helping me. So I knew I wanted to do the same for others. And so I landed on a few internships doing different work in nonprofit, but the area that made sense to me was human services and community development and economic development. And I'm a economic development story, right? I'm moved from the position I was in growing up and was able to, acquire some level of success and wealth and leave the ability to leave a legacy for my family. And so that's a story that I want to be able to help people secure. That same story.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said.
That's why.
And I really hope people are listening to this and your journey and how you were really trying to figure out and wrestle with how you want to show up on the planet. I think, to me, if you have those big conversations early and often throughout your life, like, you don't end up having to have major midlife crises or things, because you're having these mini crises.
Absolutely.
All the time. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Now, talk about the relationship between Urban League and Central County CDC. How does this work? Because this is a very common thing in CDFI space.
Yes.
How does this work so that people can understand some of these relationship dynamics in community development?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So the Urban League of Broward County will celebrate our 50th year anniversary in 2025. So I got to put that out there, representing my Urban League of Broward County. But we have always been really entrepreneurial. That water continued to be carried by my CEO, Dr. Jermaine Smith-Ball, but even her predecessor, Donald Bowen. And I think that's been the legacy of our organization. So in 1993, Urban League of Broward County made a decision to add a subsidiary called Central County Community Development Corporation to work in low-income communities to revitalize those communities in the form of housing development. And so we had the opportunity through some donated homes to redevelop them and then sell them affordably to first-time home buyers and or to maintain any of those property for rental purposes, which put us in a position of generating some revenue that goes back into the organization. So that entrepreneurial spirit in combination with being able to provide affordable housing to individuals was a marriage. And that success continued around the era recovery period, where there were dollars available through the neighborhood stabilization program. Our Central County CDC was able to work with other nonprofits in securing multiple properties, rehabbing and reselling those properties affordably to first-time homebuyers. And so we really got our sea legs during that time. And so either directly or in collaboration with other nonprofits, we've developed just under 200 homes in our county, which seems crazy, but a lot of that work was developed during that time. Beyond that, we continue to do infill housing. We work with local government, Broward County in particular. We would be given donated land lots that we would use to develop homes and then sell them affordably to first-time homebuyers. And through that NSP program, we were able to maintain some of those properties that we also make available for rental purposes, working with the housing authority locally to keep those costs low for the renters that live in that space. But again, those have generated revenue for us over time. And because we'd been successful with those efforts, we were able to work with other nonprofits and in some instances, make small loans to those nonprofits so that they can do that same development. And we recognize that we have started to build a mechanism where we can make loans. Wow. And so, the story just keeps evolving, right? And so we, in our work at the Urban League, so I'm going to back up and then come back. In our work at the Urban League, we've been able to see the value of small businesses. I shared with you, I worked specifically on the individual development account program, and that was our glimpse at what could we do in the small business entrepreneurship center space. We knew we could provide education. We knew the value of accessing capital. And so our CEO was able to secure some dollars from the state to start an entrepreneurship center. But she would say we never wanted to help people develop dreams and ideas and not being able to fund them. And so at that same time, we made the decision to vie for capital that would allow us to make loans or capital available to minority-owned businesses. And so we were successful. In 2015, we leveraged dollars from the state for a guarantee fund, but it had to be matched by private capital. While we weren't a CDFI, we knew, one, Central County CDC knows how to make loans because we've done it for other nonprofits because it was the right thing to do. But we also know that we have very good relationships in community. And so we were able to engage a couple of banking partners. Then we worked with Bank United as well as Synovus Bank in order to get some early capital. And that early capital allowed us to make our first loans without being a CDFI. So we were a loan fund. What we learned, though, is that it was difficult to continue fundraising without being a CDFI from financial institutions. And so it was critical for us to secure that CDFI designation. So I'll be honest, first time out the gate, we didn't get it. But that second time we knew. We knew better, and we did our homework, and we separated financials, and we made sure we had the appropriate consultant. We built up our staffing to ensure that we could secure that CDFI designation. And in July of 2020, smack in the middle of the pandemic, we got the letter. We got the email from the CDFI fund.
I love this story. The part that's really captivating me too is how you were doing the right thing because it was the right thing, and that continued to evolve into more and more. And I think that's just a big lesson for a lot of our listeners to lean into doing the right thing because it's right. Okay, well, we got to put some capital on the streets. Okay, now we got to, and we need a CDFI designation. Talk about what that designation does and why that serves in the CDFI space, community development financial institutions, for those who are still learning with us, because that's, it's new for a lot of people, even though it's a over 30-year-old industry.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Becoming a CDFI was not an easy process.
Yeah.
We actually wrote a white paper about this, supported by a financial institution, because it was so important, and we saw the opportunities that would unlock if we secured the designation. And that space in between, waiting and then becoming. We absolutely were able to secure additional funding as we anticipated from both the federal level through the CDFI fund, but also through local financial institutions in the form of grants, in the form of EQ2s, debt capital, and combination thereof. But you learn really early that there's so much more than just lending money to become a CDFI, right? You have to have a pipeline. You want to do effective outreach. You want to ensure that you have products and programs that are responsive to the needs of the people that we serve. And we've had to, dance with that over time. We may have put a product in place that we thought was a good product, but maybe it wasn't really responding to the needs of the folks coming in the door. And then some of what we see as need, maybe there's not a good product out there that we could venture into at this time. Maybe the loan committee thought, early stage or startup capital was too risky, so we learned, and our board has evolved over time as well. So as you become a CDFI, and I share this because I do think it's important, particularly those who are not a loan CDFI right now, but want to become a loan fund, thinking about representation, which is always pretty easy for us based on the population that we serve, that you have accountability on your board, that it represents the individuals you seek to serve, but also making sure that those board members have a good understanding of what it takes to be a CDFI, the risk that you need to take in order to be or consider in order to be a CDFI, the value of supporting that small business and what it could do if we take a chance on that business, and what things are maybe too risky, too challenging as an early stage CDFI to do. But I think training your board and making sure that they are clear about what the environment is calling for, but also having a high level of financial acumen is really important. Having board members that have served on other CDFIs offers great value if you're starting a CDFI. And so I think all of those things we've learned over time as we mature. This year in 2025 will be 5 years in the CDFI game. And it has been, a journey. It's a joy, it's a pleasure. It's also challenging and has a setback a few times. When you have a loan that's not performing, that doesn't feel great. The first couple of years, we're like, we have no defaults, we're great. And then you get that first one and it's tough, and then you get a little concerned, are you tightening, are your policies flexible enough that it creates the access that a CDFI is supposed to create credit and capital access for small businesses? But you want to be wise also and make sure that you're protecting the assets of the organization so that you can have assets available to continue to do the work that you do, right? And so I think that the development of a CDFI or growing into it, we have become much more mature, but we still learn. There's so many things that we think are available in the market that we'd like to take advantage of, but we want to be smart in how we bring on new products and services. Yeah, I can keep talking.
Yeah, no, this is great. I'm taking notes, and I hope everybody else is. This is really beautiful. No, it's beautifully said and very transparent. I'm telling it like I see it. This is good stuff. Now, here's what I want to know. A few things. There's a couple different directions we could go, but the one I want to focus on is you talked about the environment. Talk about the environment that we're heading into in 2025 and some of what you see in terms of opportunities, challenges. I know there's just a lot of people, especially in the community development space, that are hopeful. There's a lot of people that are concerned. Yeah. What's your take? Because I just really value your wisdom on this in 2025. What's your take on what we're heading into?
Yeah, I appreciate that. What we often say here, and our CEO says it more often than anyone else, is that we keep the people in the center. Right? That we got to ensure that the work that we do always keeps the people in the center, regardless of who's in office. We're nonpartisan, right? So regardless of who's in office, if we keep the focus on the people, the end user, the beneficiary, the small business, we will be able to continue to do our work successfully. And I believe that. I truly believe that. So if that is the end game, making sure that our minority-owned businesses, low-income businesses, underserved small businesses have access to credit and capital that they need to sustain their businesses, grow their businesses, scale their businesses in that order, then we will figure out the right words and language to talk to whoever's in office, right? Because we know what's most important in this community. I think those businesses, we're seeing a lot of dynamics. Some of our businesses are performing quite well and others are challenged with scaling. You know, maybe they had fast growth and now they're just trying to figure out how to right size and scale that business so that it could be sustained over time. And we recognize that while the capital is important, what's even more important is the technical support and business development services. We can't abandon them. Once we give them a loan, it's not okay to walk away, even if the loan is performing. We want to check in, give opportunities for them to continue to get services if they need them. One-on-one or through technical experts, accounting support is often needed. So we try to make that available where we can. We do it in the form of a few programs, one in particular, our UBiz CoLab, which allows a small business to pay a membership fee, very small. It's a very small proportion of the actual cost of the program. But over 6 months, they're working with an accountant, someone in marketing, legal, operations, and IT to really help them resolve challenges that they've had in those areas, one-on-one over that 6-month period. We've had folks that have gone through that program and graduated and have gotten a loan, or folks that have a loan and have gone into the program after. So pre or post loan, it's a critical service that we recognize is really needed as businesses work to grow and scale. But beyond that, I just think there are a lot of opportunities out there, some of which we're not taking full advantage of at this time. I think when we talk about our entrepreneurship center and those coming in the door, there's a lot of startup activity. Folks who have big ideas and they want to put those ideas into action and they need capital to do it. And so we firmly believe that while folks may need capital, that sometimes the capital isn't the answer, at least not to start. You know, are you properly formed? Or do you have a business plan? Have you been working on those other elements that ensure that your business has a good model and is successful and that is loan ready is the question, right? And then if so, what are the forms of capital that you can consider? Certainly a loan might be one, but for us, it's usually, can we help them leverage a grant? Is there anything that we could work with early stage businesses in the way of a pitch competition? And so we do all of those things to ensure that if they can get free money, let's start with free money. But at the point that you have successfully utilized those dollars, is there something that we can do to support you? And so today we don't have a early stage product. And so for us, I think that's an opportunity. We are exploring work with a local city of Lauderhill, to do a Kiva initiative to help connect those early stage businesses to Kiva. So we intend to launch that in early 2025, so that while it's not a balance sheet impact for us, again, it's less about that. How do we respond to the needs of businesses that are coming to the door with the appropriate product and service that'll allow them to grow and scale?
And that comes back to doing the right thing because it's right, you know,
it's just the right thing to do.
Practicing putting the people at the center. And I will say long term, it always comes back around as far as balance sheet impact or whatever that's just a natural, I think, law of the universe, is if you're doing the right thing for the right reasons and you continue to do that over time, these people might borrow from you later in a different way, or it just always comes.
That's our hope. That is our hope. Yeah. That they see themselves growing with us, that there's a continuum, right? That you could be an early stage business and get something, whether it's support or capital, but you could also be a mature business and still see value in working with your Central County CDC and Urban League. So we want to support folks along the journey. And if we're not providing you capital, we could connect you to a financial institution who might have a better product for you when it makes sense, if and when it makes sense. So that's truly our desire.
I love that. That's the heart that I think is so needed in this space. And I love the wisdom that you're bringing to it. Now, I know you are leaning into figuring out what is next in the climate space, climate lending and justice, what that looks like for you. What are you curious about? What are you thinking about? What do you know? What do you not know? You know, because I think there are a lot of people, especially in the CDFI space, that are in a very similar boat. They know that this is important, vital to the next decade plus. And they're saying, okay, how do I participate in a way that makes sense where we can have the type of impact that we want to have? So what are you thinking about?
This is so timely. We're not presently doing work in this space, but man, we should be. And I really credit African American Alliance of CEOs, because I believe that you all have really worked to get us ready, right? You're offering training opportunities, giving us exposure to the work that can be done related to climate justice. And we've tapped into those resources. We've not made loans in this space, but we're in South Florida. You know, the opportunity to work with small businesses who are doing retrofits or adding solar panels and giving them the capacity to do that work makes sense to me. We just haven't done it yet. We haven't unlocked it yet, but we are learning and readying ourselves to be in a position that we can do that down the road. And my hope is that the runway is long enough that we don't miss the opportunity to jump on as we continue to learn. So I do believe that that's a great position for us because we're in South Florida. I think, interestingly, because we're also a developer, we've contemplated making development loans, housing development related loans. And as we look at climate and housing development, I think there are opportunities there too. There are some folks doing great work in this space. So by no stretch of the imagination are we trying to absorb the market there. But I think there are some low-hanging fruit opportunities for us to consider, in as much as we are also a developer. We have some inside knowledge about what it may take to take advantage of some of those opportunities that are in the market. Just figuring out what a product may look like if we were to do it directly, I think is the space we're in. So we're in learning mode. We'll continue to be until we feel like this is a suitable time, and the board supports us growing in that way.
Well, a couple of things I'll say. One is, as far as absorbing the market, this is an expanding, exponentially expanding market. There is no absorbing it. Like, the need is so great for the planet, for the people, for the, you know, any which way you spin it, that this has to be the urgent initiative of our time, especially as it affects Black and brown communities who are disproportionately affected by climate justice.
So true.
Yeah. And so I love the way you're leaning in. And then the other piece that I would say that I'm hearing a lot in the CDFI space is to, as you're doing with development, you know, you're already doing development. How do you take what you're already doing and play in that space in a green way? Like, you don't have to reinvent, as you know, like, you don't have to reinvent and all these new products and whatever. And I think that's what's holding a lot of people back in this space. It's like, I just don't know about that. Well, no, but you know about small business loans, right? You know about how to develop. Okay, well, now learn about heat pumps. Now learn about all the, you know, the way, the proper windows that need to go on here to make it green. Like, you're already doing it. And so I think the barrier is less than people feel.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
Yeah. What's your reaction to that for the listeners that are trying to get into this space?
I think you're absolutely right. I think that you all have done a good job saying, try it, right? Get out there and start something, right? Because I think once we start something, it'll demonstrate that it's doable, right? And we're already working with small businesses. Now it's just a matter of finding small businesses that are in that space, right? We're already doing housing development. How do we use what we're doing in the homes that we developed to do the same for others, right? Help them be able to do more of the same. And so I don't think you're wrong. I think it just takes some guts to go out there and try it. And so that's on the horizon for us. Not quite there, but I think it's something that we should do. And going back to why we do what we do, for that reason more than anything else. If we think about Black and brown communities and how we're impacted by climate resiliency, particularly here, and sea level rise, that should be enough for us to want to be in this space. Right. So for no other reason than it's also the right thing to do. Right. Because
which has been your entire journey, which I love.
Right. That's why we do what we do. That's the reason to at least investigate and explore what we can do today in that space.
Yeah.
So
Well,
we're
there's
coming.
also an
We're coming.
opportunity. We were talking about the small businesses that you support and then finding other small businesses in that space.
Yeah.
There's even, I think, potentially lower hanging fruit, which is small businesses you already serve who could easily make small pivots to enter
Yeah.
that space. So like I think about contractors, roofers,
Yeah.
you know, any like landscapers even,
Yeah.
and saying, okay, well, how do we enhance what they're already doing
It's a
to be able to
good
play
point.
in this space? It's technically climate related, some of which they're already even doing. They just don't
Right.
even know that they're doing it.
They're climate
right?
adjacent, right?
They're
They don't
right
even
there.
know.
So
So how
just
do we, yeah.
boost them
And
over there.
I think it's wise. And I don't know that we've thought that through. I think that's a really good strategy in terms of having folks see themselves in the space,
Who
right?
you already have. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
you're
have them. I
already doing
guarantee they're on your balance sheet.
And it will unlock other dollars for them if they open themselves up to considering it. The same story I'm saying about the small businesses is the same story for us. Is that what you're saying right now? Yeah.
I love that.
I hear you. I
Yeah.
see you and I hear you. Yes.
I love that. Yeah, they're right there. You have them, right? So it's like you giving them a nudge is also giving you a nudge. You don't even have to
Right.
get new clients to start.
That's right.
Like this is anyway, let me not get
I
off
love
on
that
this
idea. All right. You're putting more work on the plate and I love it.
Good. I'm happy because y'all can do it and you have been historically doing it. So I want to see more of that. Okay, well, that kind of got me on a little bit of a tangent. Here's where I want to go next.
Let's hear it.
As we talk about Black and brown communities, what does Black liberation mean to Courtnee Biscardi?
Oh, I love this. There are a lot of barriers. So I think about what barriers, could be removed when I think about Black liberation and long-term wealth, right? A lot of the wealth that we've built in our community is through homeownership, which is the data tells us we're not performing well there, right? And really, so that you have value, that you have net worth, that you could transfer that value over to members of your family. And that's where that comes from, but the access to homeownership is often challenged by credit, right? And so I think good credit creates access, in many respects. While, our CDFI is not restricted to credit scores, right? We look at other compensating factors. In general, in the general market, credit is a barrier for so many of the folks that we see. So not having good credit or challenging credit is a major barrier. And so making sure that folks are stewarding that credit, I think is so important today in terms of liberation. Debt, on the opposite side, having major debt, in as much as we provide loans and, we'll continue to do responsible lending, debt saddles us, right? The enormous amount of debt. Financial freedom is freedom, right? And so I think financial freedom is liberation in our communities. And so how do we ensure that even if folks have debt, that it stays on the positive side, right? That we're able
it's good
to
debt.
Yeah, demonstrating the ability to repay till we pay it off, right? I think is freedom in our community. I think the ability to express, the freedom of expression and to be able to live and raise our family and grow free of concern about challenges in how you've expressed yourself, right? I want folks to feel like they have equal access and opportunity to grow their families and to ensure that their children get a good education and to ensure they have access to credit and capital when they need it as they're looking to grow their family and strengthen their legacy for their family. So I think it's defined as so many things. Those are just a few. But it's a story that I hope to be able to demonstrate, for my children and over time. I shared the story of how I grew up, and I can't say that my upbringing was a demonstration of Black liberation in many ways, right? But it gave me a foundation that allowed me to position my family a little differently, right? And I'm really proud of that my kids get to see that, some of the things that I experienced that they don't have to experience. And doesn't mean we're completely free. By no stretch of the imagination am I saying that, but I see more freedom, right? And so I'm hoping the same for my children. And
I'm loving this concept of liberation as generational, right? Like as we're thinking beyond our current lifetime, but what does it look like for Black people to be free? in perpetuity, right? Which is like what that, yeah, I'm going to chew on that. I really like that thought train.
Yeah.
That's good. Now, here's what I want to know. We're getting close to the end here. What is a fun fact that not everybody knows about Courtnee? What is something that is like, a hidden talent or something that you got going on?
So something I often share is that I do like to sing a little karaoke on my downtime. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I love to sing my whole life.
Now, what's the karaoke vibe? Are you talking like you're throwing back some sake? You're doing the like, what's the
neo soul? If I'm doing karaoke with the family, probably go neo soul. If it's just me around the house, it's going to be a little gospel, a little neo soul combination, right?
What's your go-to song? Like, hey, Courtnee, you're in a karaoke contest, and you got all the lyrics to say my name. Like, what is that one?
It's funny. Song choice is a big deal in karaoke. And I can't say that I always pick the best song choice, but an easy one for me that I like to do is India, I'll Read the Truth. Love the song. But it flows with my voice. And so low hanging fruit song go to. Or Killing Me Softly, Lauryn Hill. It's a crowd pleaser. Yeah.
And then you got to balance that if you're in a karaoke contest. I think that's really important. Okay, good. All right. So now we've mentioned a few things, but what is immediately on the horizon for Central County CDC? Like, what are you really leaning into heading into this new year, the vision that you have that you want to execute on for you and your team?
So certainly continued growth, but we want to be able to appropriately scale as well. So we're still relatively new as a CDFI, 30 years as an organization, kind of new as a CDFI, 5 years. And as we mature, as I said, there are more pain points as you mature. One thing that I'll never forget, God rest her soul, Inez Long from the Black Business Investment Fund. When we first became a CDFI, Dr. Baugh and I met with her. And we said, pour into us, share what you know. And one of the things that she said that stays with me as a reminder and keeps us humble is the same things that a Black business that you're trying to fund experiences are the same things that you as a CDFI experience. So you're very similar in that way in terms of your growth. And I appreciate that because it's the reminder that even when things are going well, there's still some challenges in the process. It reminds you that the small business that's sitting in front of you, they might not have everything perfect, but you could see where there's opportunities and how you can get behind them to help them grow. And she did that for us that day. But so for me, making sure that whatever we do, it makes sense, that we have the ability to grow and scale, and that comes with having proper funding, proper infrastructure in terms of staffing, that our products and programs and services are responsive, and that they move the needle for our community that we desire, that we're having an impact on residents and build in businesses and low income areas so that they can acquire this Black liberation that we talked about, right? But at the end of the day, we know that we want to grow from being a $9 million, CDFI fund in terms of assets. We want to make sure we are a $15 million CDFI fund in the next few years.
Yep.
That's where I want to go. I
Double
want to
money and make it stack.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes.
And having a good combination of the kinds of funds that we get from federal government through CDFI fund, but also through EQ2 investments. And heck, we continue to secure grant capital. Equity equivalent investments, often secured by financial institutions. They're able to use it as a nod to their CRA commitment, Community Reinvestment Act commitment. And it goes a long way in allowing us to lend dollars at a low interest rate for those small businesses in our community. And so we're grateful for those funds, but you have to balance the combination. You pay for the money. We're paying for the money that we get in the form of debt capital and EQ2. So you have to be able to cover those interest costs. I tell borrowers, or we often share, sometimes folks think because you're a nonprofit that the dollars that you have available are free. And we know that's not the case. We are paying money so that we can lend you money. So I can't give it to you for free. I have to get it paid back, right? Because I have to pay somebody back at some point. The cool thing about EQ2s, the interest rates are low, but also you have time. right? So a 10-year facility is ideal, that we would not be considering having to pay that back if all goes well before that maturity date of 10 years. So we've been blessed to have some of those, and to continue to secure those, I think is important for our growth and scale. And at the same time, just making sure that we're thinking through those gaps in the market. So one of them, startup. And we're, as I shared, going to launch in early 25 some programming that will respond to some of that startup need, knowing that over time, if they need additional capital, they can see us. We'd also like to bring in a line of credit product, which we don't have today, but we see that in our current portfolio that could have been a better type of capital to give to some businesses versus a term loan. So we like the
right, because it's a bit more revolving.
Yeah, the flexibility of line of credit. And then resiliency. We're definitely keeping an eye out for what could we do in that climate justice space to ensure that businesses who need the support in that area to continue to do their development, that we can be supportive and help them make good on those commitments they've made in community and that. So
yes,
just a few of the things that we're pretty excited about.
Well, the Alliance is in your corner. I want to thank you today, Courtney. You've been wonderful. Thank you for your wisdom, your heart, your brilliance that you bring to this space. I also want to thank Dr. Bob for letting us borrow you. I already knew you would not disappoint, but this was, it's like they said about King Solomon, the half of it wasn't even told to me.
Yes, I love it.
It's like, what? Way up there. I'm trying to, it's nice.
I appreciate you. Thank you for this. Thank you. And I'll say this, if you wouldn't mind, as I prolong this. I am not a shy person, but making sure that CDFIs are communicating and doing effective outreach and marketing to promote that the work that we do is so critical. Thanks for pushing us to do it, right? Because I think oftentimes we're doing our work and we're like, people know, but we have to push beyond what's easy and uncomfortable to make sure that folks know that we're available. We are actively lending in South Florida, Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County, and we can even lend throughout the state. And so it's important that our small businesses know that we are here to serve them and that they take advantage of this. And it's only because we get to do this in partnership, the African American Alliance, so CDFI CEOs, you guys have been amazing. One of the best decisions that we made as a CDFI was joining this network. I'm being really honest with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And you just really hit at the heart of even this series and why we're doing this is our CDFIs, the big-hearted, beautiful organizations are doing the work, but not everybody knows about the work and not enough people know about the work, even if the outreach is big.
Yeah.
Like more people need to know, I come across way too many people who don't know what a CDFI is, right? So like, we're starting from there and tapping in to this. So thank you for getting it and for seeing us as we do this work. It matters. It matters.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of course. And now to all of our listeners, everybody who tuned in, you could have been anywhere else, but you chose to be here with us on this Tuesday or whenever you're listening to this. Thank you. Please share and amplify this interview so that Courtney and the team over at Central County CDC get more visibility, more love. That's one way that we can really do it. So share this out. It's free and it'll make a big difference. So thank you very much. Happy holidays, however you celebrate them to everybody. Sending you all kind of light and love this season. I think that's it. Have we done it?
Thank you.
All right. Minott out. I've never said that. This is Black Money.
About economic liberation and freedom.
Critical conversations to invigorate our communities through Black-led CDFIs.
But most importantly, we want people to create wealth.
When we look at our communities, we still see a big disinvestment.
Going from resourceful to resourced.
CDFIs have that high touch. They understand their customers. They know how to reach out to those customers. They stay in touch with those customers.
We are trying to create job makers and not just job takers.
Yeah, I've even heard it said recently that great leaders don't lead from the top down, they lead from the bottom up because they're actually lifting everybody.
We have to do more than just being a regular lender.
Don't give me this story about if I teach you how to fish.